that's in a basement comes the epic story of how two friends changed the future of the movie podcast game forever. The reviews are in. Boys Life magazine gives the High Side podcast 4.5 acorns. The Daily Bugle says, these guys are super legit. And Pope Francis declares the podcast as life-affirming. From the kid who tried to get smart with David Spade and got fucking old.
You're still out. You're still bad.
And the guy who can name all 4 Baldwin brothers.
Alec, William, Daniel, and the baby boy, Stephen.
Live from the studio of his parents' basement, the Have You Seen It podcast.
Whoa!
What's up, dude?
Wow, what is going on?
Oh my gosh, so much.
God. Well, we're here.
We are here.
It's been a while.
And this is it has been a while.
It has been a while.
It's been a whole 3 minutes since we've been on these microphones.
Yeah, I missed you. I missed hearing that voice.
From all the way down over there to back. It was
from
good
3
seeing
feet
you
away.
again,
Yeah.
Klaus.
But we're
Yes.
here again.
We are.
to
And this
talk.
is a special podcast.
This is a special
Very
one.
special podcast.
First, I know it's been a while, but I wanted to bring this up to you.
Yes.
I started watching ER again.
What?
You know,
That is so odd.
You
Okay, that
know-
is so random.
I was watching it for a while and I had to stop. I just had to put it on pause. It was becoming too big a part of my life. It was starting to.
Are you an ER guy?
There's just so much drama in that hospital. It's so hard.
I could
not to.
imagine.
It's there's.
It's almost as bad as Grey's Anatomy.
At some point you got to think. This is hindering the doctor's work. They're putting patients at harm with this amount of drama. I mean, everyone's fucking everyone in that hospital.
Of course. Well,
Everyone
it makes
is.
sense. I mean, they're working 12, 16-hour shifts.
But they're
What do you
just-
expect?
And they're constantly fucking up. Constantly.
Not the best doctors in the world. Curious to see what school they graduated
They're supposed to
from.
be pretty good. But yeah, it's a training school. This is
Oh,
ER,
I see.
that's
So they're
what it-
training on humans.
Well, yeah, they're training residents that come in.
Oh, okay.
Right, so that we get a lot of that, and but a lot of drama. These doctors, they're all very fucked up. They're all just terrible people.
Which is, interesting. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
it doesn't seem like they could find the time to be fucked up people because they're in the hospital.
Oh, they
all
find
the
the
time.
time. Trust me, it's 90% just drama at that hospital.
Didn't
Not
that-
a lot. Of,
Yeah, and didn't that show have like 15 seasons?
it
altogether?
has around
Yeah, it got
9.
like a ton.
Oh, it's got a lot of seasons,
Yeah.
and it really goes off the rails.
Oh, I can imagine. As most shows do after about
around-
that 8-season mark, they really go off.
Yeah, but it's Spielberg. It's Spielberg.
Yeah.
What do you know? Like just Steven Spielberg? You ever heard of him?
No, never heard of
He
him.
makes movies.
He does.
He's pretty good.
Is he like
so
a-
to make fun of me for watching?
Is he like a
ER,
grip guy or something? Or?
He's a key grip. Yeah.
Oh, key grip? Okay, cool.
The most famous key grip in Hollywood.
Wow, that's interesting.
He's been on all the big sets.
I figured I would have heard of him.
No, but yeah. So it's back. It's taking over my life. I just started hanging out in hospitals just to
get the
relive the,
feel.
drama. I'm not
Right.
getting enough. I just hang out in ERs now, just to get the real sense.
You know what? You
But
got to do what you got to do at the end
hospital
of the
is
day.
like that hospital in Chicago.
Oh, I can
it's
imagine.
constantly crazy shit coming in. Constantly. Most of the time, people are coming in the hospital to do crazy shit.
crazy
Yeah.
shit. They're like,
Shootings, all
Where are we
kinds
gonna
of
party?
stuff. Yeah, it's. I mean,
Party in this hospital, this Chicago hospital.
it's crazy, but I know that you've been wondering where I'm at.
I was.
Because it's been a while since
I
I've
noticed you
given
were
an-
growing a beard again.
It's been a while since I've given you the ER update, but I
Yeah.
thought it's important for me to tell you where I'm at. And
Okay.
So if you don't see me for a month, 2 months, it's because I'm doing an ER deep dive.
Speaking of medical dramas,
And
what did
one
you...
day when you are choking or dying of something, you'll come to me.
Right.
And I'll laugh over your dying body.
But I have to be honest, Cash. I don't think I would have the ample time as I'm choking to get in my car, buckle myself up, drive over to your house, and have you proceed to do the Heimlich maneuver
I was more
on me.
saying if we're recording a podcast and something goes down.
Oh, okay. So about
Then-
2 hours out of my whole week. So
I mean, it's a small
it's
window.
a very small window.
But if it does happen, you're going to be glad I watched all 9 seasons of ER.
Right. So
twice.
basically, if I'm going to put any choking hazards in my guzzle, then it
Yeah.
should be on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So that way you're able to perform the Heimlich.
If
on
you're
me.
playing with marbles, you put them in your mouth or something.
Right.
Small Lego pieces like you tend to do. And I got to slap it
okay.
out of your hand.
Right.
Caps, yeah. I will be able to save you. I will be able to perform an emergency tracheotomy.
Right. You're not
if you need it. If you need it to happen, I can do
a
that
pen
with
right in the throat.
with-
Yeah.
just jabbing at it, hoping
And
I
I
get the
could
right
see
spot.
you, your hands, no shake whatsoever.
Oh, no shake.
You've done this a million times. You know what the hell you're
And I
doing.
plunge it in, and it just immediately kills you.
And it immediately,
It goes right into your head.
not what I was going
then it
for.
turns
I was
out-
going to say immediately releasing the air,
No.
but
It turns out
okay,
watching
this went
ER
dark.
does not make you a doctor.
It does not.
It does not
No.
give you any kind of knowledge.
no inkling on
And it's a
how
TV
to,
show, and I'm not sure they're doing it right. Most of the time,
Right. No.
most of the time they're not doing actual doctor work.
No, they have no idea what they're doing.
Anyways, what show is this? What are we here for?
We're here, and we're actually, this is, I think, the first time on the podcast, Cash, that we have reviewed a documentary.
Yeah, ever.
Can you think of any other time we've
Never.
reviewed a documentary?
I would have known.
So
I
this
would've-
is a first time on the Have You Seen a Podcast?
Yeah, and what-
what better documentary
none
than
better.
this one?
None. There's none better documentaries. But yeah. So we'll tell us what we're reviewing. Go ahead, give it to us.
They Shall Not Grow Old.
Yes.
By Peter Jackson.
The World War I doc by Peter Jackson.
100-year-old footage restored to 4K quality.
For colored
Colored on top of that.
colored quality. It's yeah.
And I wanted to ask you.
Yes,
So
ask me.
obviously we had Peter Jackson kind of give us a brief overview of the film before the film actually started, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you saw if you were there on time.
I was there.
Okay.
What are you saying? I'm not,
You never show up to
What are you
movies on
trying to
time?
say? What are you trying to
Probably. That's actually. I was trying to give you a little undercut there. No, but did you stay afterwards?
I did.
I did too. I watched the whole
Oh, you did.
process.
Even though you were late for work that you said. I was.
Plead the fifth on that one.
I actually left to go to the bathroom and then came back and watched
Right.
it during the credits because
Yeah.
you had to sit through the whole credits and I had to go pee very, very bad. But I came back. Yeah, I wasn't gonna miss that. No way.
It was worth every second.
absolutely,
The way
yeah.
they were able to restore this footage was
It's crazy.
really incredible.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
And how hard they had to work to do it too.
Oh, it took them
Hundreds
forever.
and hundreds
Yeah.
and hundreds of hours.
Well, it was 600 hours of voice interviews,
Right.
and 100 hours of footage that they had to go to.
Yeah.
So
and they had to narrow it down to 2 hours.
yeah,
all of it.
It took them a year just to go through the footage.
Yeah.
just to watch it all. Mm-hmm. Insane! What a
because there were-
massive undertaking.
Oh, I know, because there were so many different storylines that they could have went with as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, they could have went with the Americans overseas. They could have done the airplanes, which is what Peter
yeah, they
Jackson was
show.
talking
Oh,
about.
yeah, they could have done anything. Yeah,
And
so
they had really
much
good archive footage that they showed after the film that I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that would have been really cool to see too. We almost could see 50 hours of this documentary restored footage.
Oh,
I wish they'd restore
I
it
could
all.
have sat through 10 hours of this in the
Same.
theaters. I could have easily sat through. All I wanted was more after watching it.
Yeah.
I could have easily sat through 10 hours of them going through the entire war.
Right.
The entire World War I, all
Exactly.
from 1914 to 1918. The footage is just absolutely incredible.
And what an insane time in American history, in human history,
Yeah.
where we have these catastrophic, in like so many deaths, but they're still riding horseback.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was
like
a
before
very
really,
odd time, World War
Yeah.
I, where it was right between that industrialized age.
Yep.
It was right between old warfare and modern warfare. It was
Mm-hmm.
so it was a very strange, and it was very strange for the soldiers to join because a lot of them did not know what to expect from modern warfare.
They
And
had no idea.
And modern warfare is much more gruesome than
Right.
older knights and even muskets and whatnot from the 50 years before 1914 and everything. But yeah.
You know what I loved about this? The way they narrated this documentary.
Yeah.
It was no, this is my spin on it. Peter Jackson literally took all the audio. The whole narration of this entire documentary was done from the perspective of the World War I survivors.
Yeah.
Of the World War I soldiers who
Yeah.
were part of the war.
We'll get into it, but it's all from the soldier's perspective. There's absolutely no convoluted
no narrator,
no stats.
nothing.
There's no how the war happened. There's no history of why it happened. It's all 100% that humanistic.
Yep.
Point aside, that's never been done. It's never been. It's whenever you see a documentary, you just get numbers. You get 1 million people died here. You never actually know the names behind those numbers or anything.
Nope.
And that is what he set out to do: is make it so it's the first time you get the human side of the war. Because usually it's just, soldiers running to their death. You never actually get to know any of them. And that's what this does. We get a history. It goes from boot camp. It follows one kind of company or whatever from boot camp to battles to the end of the war.
Yeah.
And it just follows from that perspective. Yeah. And it was amazing.
It is, man. It was so well done.
Yeah. Seeing, and at the end of when he's showing how they do it, then when they show the footage, the original footage, it's so horrible how bad that footage aged, and how he's talking about how it was all warped and everything. I could not.
Oh, it was shaky.
Yeah.
And see, they used to shoot. What is this? Oh, they used to shoot in 10 frames, 12 frames a second. And what he had to do is he had to speed up that footage to 24 frames to get it to where it needed to be. And it's so shaky and so spotty because obviously the film
It's been sitting in a vault for 100 years, and all this footage it's degradable. It warps over time and everything. Yep. So and it was cracked and everything about almost to the point where you can't see what's going on with these footage.
Right.
So the fact that they were able to colorize it and show everything is, my God, it's crazy.
And through doing this, man. Through doing this, one thing that it really brought is it really humanized every single one of those soldiers. Being able to see them smile, being able to see them joke around, not in this choppy, archaic footage that we used to see, where we kind of don't get to connect with them because we look at that as, oh, this is part of history. But the way this footage was so well done that the movements, everything, the way that they walked literally looked like human beings.
Yeah.
And not just this historic piece.
Usually when we see footage like that, we just see soldiers. But with this, we see, the people. And we realize that they're just normal fucking guys, everyday Joes. Most of them were kids. A lot of them were kids.
And that's what I was just about to bring up, the stories. And again, these are soldiers telling their own stories where they would go to I'll just say the VA because I don't know what it's, but wherever you go to the recruiter.
The barracks.
Yeah,
they call it a barracks back then. Yeah.
And they go there and they were like, he's like, yeah, I'll be 16 next month. He goes, you mean 19?
He goes, yeah. He goes, you better go outside and have a birthday.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah,
it's crazy, though.
It's awesome,
And that's what those kids used to do. They had no idea what was waiting for them. But they just wanted to serve,
Yeah.
Because, again, all their friends and stuff were going in the into the army as well.
And back then, you could do conscription where you can go in and you can you could join the army with the people from your town.
Yeah.
And they'd keep you all the way in from boot camp, and they keep you in the same so you could go within with all your buddies and everything. Now they don't do that because if your entire company dies, you wipe out an entire town.
Yeah.
And they used to do it where you could join up with your brothers and everything.
It's called the buddy system back then.
Yeah, and they don't do that anymore because people were being wiped out and the towns didn't have men anymore.
Well, do you remember the one story where the guy was literally talking about how his friend took the blunt of that shell that came in and he was screaming in agony and he had to look his friend and shoot him.
We'll talk about that. Yeah,
misery.
that's a great. But let's just talk about the intro because it intros in and it's all black and white.
It is,
right?
Yeah,
which kind of surprised me because
it surprised me too because I was like,
hold
on, whoa, what's going on?
It's
here?
great footage. It's absolutely great footage,
is.
but it's all pre-war. It's all leading up to and everything. But that aspect of it was something that was amazing to me. The aspect how all these guys just looked at it as a job. No hesitation at all. They knew that they didn't know what they're going to war for, most of them. Most of them didn't know anything, but they knew that their country was going to war, so they were going to go fight for the country. Crazy. And without a doubt, they just all joined. These kids.
They were
and some of the kids they show look like they're fucking 12.
Right. They don't even look like men at all.
They don't even look
Not
like they're
even
15.
Close.
Yeah, and but you even hear it's so cool because the entire thing is, it's these the voices. They're all narrators, but we never get to see the actual narrators or anything like that.
Right.
So we get to see it. So it's all just these voices of them talking and narrating. It's a bunch of different voices, but we never see names or anything till the very end. But yeah, they're narrating and they're just telling how it was just a job. You just went and did it. No one complained about it or anything. it's just something you had to do. People were going to war. And I love the story at the start with the German and England teams.
The day the war was announced.
Someone came in.
And they're like, we didn't know whether or not to
story
shank him or
I've
let him
heard
go.
before. Yeah, and he's like, the guy was like, they're at a party.
Yeah.
And a messenger comes in and says that Germany and England are at war. And the English guy says, I didn't know what to grab the knife beside me and plunge it into. But it was cool because they all, just agreed that they said, well, whatever happens, the war starts tomorrow. But it's that crazy thing where they're all eating together. But then after that night, they're going to go home prepared to kill each other.
Yeah.
If they saw them, they would kill those guys immediately. If
Yep.
they saw them. So it's crazy like that.
And we see that common theme throughout this documentary
Yes.
too, where
Something that does very well is it's not propaganda. It does not shine. It
Not at all.
shows that the Germans. It's the higher ups that started the war. It's the Germans.
which is majority of the time what happens.
Oh,
All the
always.
time. Yeah, all the time. What am I talking about? It's always.
Yeah, rich people don't fight wars. It's poor people that have to go fight it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it does a good job where it never paints them. It's not propaganda at all. It just shows
Zero.
that both sides were just young guys that went and fought for their country
And
without
that's the
questioning
thing.
it.
If you were literally just to take someone who knew nothing about World War One,
Yeah.
you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know who the bad or the good guys were. So propaganda-wise, there is no propaganda in this film. It's literally just from the perspective of the soldiers and what they were going through. That's
Yeah,
it.
absolutely, yeah.
You know?
And they just went. They fucking did what they had to do.
Yeah. Well, we should get into what they had to do too, in their living conditions,
Yeah.
everything.
Well, let's just talk about how they had to go. The footage is so funny when they're all signing up and they're all just have no idea what they're doing. Just the
None.
biggest dorks.
Yeah.
They're running around and they're all. Some of them are fat. You can tell some of them are like because it was literally fucking everyone who signed up.
Yeah, everyone did.
People saw it was because they even talk about it. It was shopkeepers. It was bums off the street. It was everyone. It was just fucking everyone did it. Mm-hmm. And the guy even talked about how he was 16, which was kind of blew me. The age to enlist is 19.
19 years old.
Even
back
in
then.
1914,
Yeah.
it was 19.
And that was in England. I don't know if that was the case in the United States at the time. 'Cause I don't know if that was a case in the States, but in England it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know they usually lower those as longer as war goes on, so they can. But 19 for 1914, that's pretty progressive.
It is. It actually is. I mean, good on
But
them.
of course, no one was checking.
No one checked ID, nothing. Well, yeah, I mean, the people at the barracks were literally like, go outside, have a birthday, and come back in.
And there's a part where they're all standing. They all got signed up, and they're all actually in the army now. And the guy says, if anyone's not 19, step forward now. And no one.
That's right. That was another part too.
And
no
no
one did.
steps forward or anything. And that's yeah. But it's just crazy how brave they were.
They were
Absolutely
extremely
crazy.
brave.
Yeah.
You know, I look at that now and I'm just like, wow.
It's so nonchalant. They were like, oh, well, we had nothing else going on.
I know.
But again, they did not imagine what kind of war was going to bring because there's never been a war
absolute
like
hell.
it. There's
No,
never
there
been a
hasn't.
war like it.
Well, let's think about the last real war England was in before then.
Yeah, I don't
can't even
I don't
think
know
of
what
it.
the last war.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're always.
We're not historians
No,
by any
they were
stretch of the
all-
imagination, but
I mean, it's hard to declare. They always had their hand in something
Yeah.
England did. England was everywhere, but not a war like this. I mean, crazy. But like we said, it never talks about how the war started or anything. It never talks about
no,
England's
Archstand
side.
Ferdinand or any of that.
No,
Archduke, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't talk about anything like that, or
he was
even
assassinated.
England's side, because England was neutral at the start of the war, and they didn't want to fight until Germany invaded Belgium. Then they decided that they had to fight.
They had to do
Which is a
something.
big fucking mistake for Germany.
Yeah.
You didn't want because Germany and England were on good terms at the time. You know, it's such a long and convoluted story.
It is
The
crazy
war
story.
won. So
Yeah.
many things had to happen.
And you know what?
And pieces to fall and miscommunications, and it's just a big fucking blunder.
And
it
if you
did
want to
not-
learn, a 6-hour series on World War
Yep.
One, it's so well done. It's called Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
It's
a
amazing,
podcast.
yeah.
It is incredible. If you want to learn history, listen to that guy. He can tell a story so well. The research is
it gets
far
into
enough.
every detail about war,
does.
but that's definitely not something this movie did. This
No, it
is
didn't.
not for the war historian or anything like that. Yeah, but they get signed up and they go to boot camp and they're all just they're all skinny and they're all
Out of shape.
Yeah, when you see them,
Yeah.
it's like Bad News Bears.
Right.
When they tell them to
The
turn
kid
right,
fuddling with the rifle. He can't even put the bullet in
when
the
they tell
gun.
when they tell them to turn right, have them turn left, and
Yeah.
you see all the CEOs and everything are like, oh my
Oh boy,
god,
this is gonna be a long
Yeah,
8
and
weeks.
It's so funny because it's like the typical war movie that
It
you
is,
see
yeah.
where it's like they all came in, they all had to get their hair shaved, and they all look like convicts and everything. But man, after too long, they fucking look like soldiers.
Yeah,
they
they
shaped
did.
them up.
They
pretty-
did real fast.
And I
mean,
love
good on them.
I love the exercise they showed them doing. It's like the old
Yeah, the
19
old
kids,
school.
like a calisthenic, like hopping around, like
Yeah,
it's so funny. And they're all like to show like the people that were in good shape were like, I mean, they weren't fat. They were barely in good
Right,
shape.
yeah.
They were like ripped or anything. But yeah, but they go to boot camp, and I love it because they're all talking about how hard it is and how a lot of them want to quit or whatever at the start, and how shitty the breakfast is and everything, and how
The food was awful. I don't know how they did it.
well it was better than what a lot of them were getting though, because they
getting,
talk about how
especially
at
over
the
in-
end of boot camp, on average, they gained 14 pounds and grew an inch in height. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's how malnourished most of these people were,
Right.
where they weren't getting, obviously, most of them weren't getting 3 square meals. This is probably the first time they've ever gotten it. But, yeah, they grew an inch on average.
Isn't it
Imagine
so crazy?
growing a fucking inch.
I know. And isn't it crazy to think that was only 100 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a
that was-
generation or two. It's wild.
yeah. And let's talk about the teeth on these guys.
You know, not the best dental work I've
Oh
seen. I
my
don't know
God.
if there was a single dentist in the UK.
I know
at the
there's a
time.
lot of shit about
So-
English people's teeth, but my God. I mean, when you see World War One footage of American soldiers,
Right.
we got teeth. At least we
Yeah.
have teeth. But these guys, I mean, if you had 5 teeth, you were looking
were
good.
doing good,
You
yeah.
were you were probably the
ladies
son of a
loved ya.
dentist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, these gnarly English teeth.
And it's not like they were super old either. I mean,
No,
the majority of
no,
these guys,
no, no.
again, were 17,
Oh, it
18,
was-
19 years old, and their teeth are already rotten to the core.
But that's for the first time you could see that kind of detail though
Yeah.
in these, where you could see the nasty ass fucking teeth these guys had. I like the story about the prank they played on the CEO, which normally I think now you just get shot.
Probably.
About them pissing in the pot or peeing in the pot and like passing it around and
Oh,
then
yeah,
putting
yeah,
it on
yeah.
and then letting their main officer come in and get drenched in piss. That's a ballsy
It is
prank.
very ballsy, especially with your CEO.
But again, that's like it looks so different back then. It looks like they're all just having a good time. It's like camp, you know.
Yeah.
They're all having fun or whatever. They talk about how a lot of it was. Again, they talk about how the worst thing they did was the marching. Marching was really hard. They talked about
Oh,
how
right.
for a long time they had to march and everything. One guy was
Oh, yeah,
like,
it went from 10 miles to
yeah.
12 miles
One
to
guy
15
was like,
miles.
my legs started cramping, then my thighs. Yeah.
Well, and the boots that they wore, too, were awful.
Oh,
And
yeah.
They give them that, and that was a lot of the reason why they were doing those long marches, is to get their feet ready to
Well, that's
march
what of
those
those-
sort of distances.
That's what those boots were for, was no matter what happens to your leg, they're so tight on your leg, they keep you standing
Yeah.
up. So no matter what, they would keep you standing up at least. And they weren't, no one got the right size or anything. They said they just handed them
Yeah,
out
they just hand you
randomly.
boots, yeah.
And you had
You
to
got
go
what you
like
got.
mismatch 4 people and one uniform. That's it. But I liked how they were marching, and then they marched all the young guys to the barracks to sign them up.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, these idiots. Yeah, and they're like, some of them just signed, and we just walked them right down to the barracks. Yeah, that's what you gotta do. You gotta
what's up.
recruit. But yeah, and it's still in black and white at this point, you know.
It still is, yeah.
And
the
then,
whole basic training was in black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the whole thing, but it's really good footage though, and it's really interesting.
Well, you could
footage that
still,
never
you could
see.
still, it
Yeah.
was still restored. It just, they didn't put color in it. But I kind of like the way that they did that, because
Yeah.
they still gave you that old feeling. Because then when the transition happens,
exactly,
you're like,
yeah.
you're really blown away, because you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this is something that took a long time. That was my immediate thought. Seeing the first time I saw color, it was funny, Cash. I had to go to the bathroom, okay? And this was right before boot camp was over. I scared the people, because it was all older people in the theater, because I was in the movie parlor. I ran out of the theater like there was a fire. And like even the employees were like, what the hell is this guy doing? I sprinted to the bathroom, took a piss, ran back, and I made it back 30 seconds before they switched over to color.
thing
And
you
I am
did.
so glad that I did. And that's why I brought up this point.
Yeah.
Because I was completely mesmerized by the footage.
It does this awesome seamless transition from black and white to like a very narrow screen where it's not taking up the full screen of the theater. And then it goes full fucking widescreen, 4K, and then the colors seep in. And it takes a while for your brain to
even
figure
process
it out.
it,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's such a bizarre thing. Because like Peter Jackson said at the start, when he first saw it, he couldn't believe it. And when I first saw it, I did not believe it.
No.
It's almost like dream-esque, where you can't process what your brain is seeing because it's so clear. It looks like it was shot yesterday.
Yep.
It looks like it was shot on a 4K because it's unbelievable how they did that. How clear the pictures and the colors of like the soldiers' uniforms and how they're all different. The buttons and the grass.
The grass even.
The grass was unbelievable,
Yeah.
and the background plays a huge part in the movie, but it's so clear, and it really does. It like your brain can't really figure it out.
And we talk about a lot on this podcast the fine details in directing, but hats off to Peter Jackson because he talked about how much time he took on this. He goes, a lot of these war documentaries don't take the necessary time to color grade. This one, he wanted to take that necessary time. He went to the original places where these battles took place and took thousands upon thousands of pictures to make sure that the landscape was exactly color graded to what it was where they were.
Well, he's a huge World War I buff.
He is.
Which
He
was a
had
big part
family
because
members fight, too. And
and
die.
And J.R. Tolkien or J.R.R. Tolkien, who also fought in World War I. That was kind of a big reason of him picking up Lord of the Rings and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had family members in it, and he had a ton of stuff already where he had a lot of the uniforms and everything that he could do the color.
Yeah.
And he could show
He had
people
the
what the
cannons and
exact
stuff
color.
too, which
yeah.
was awesome. Yeah. The
So
artillery.
exactly. And there's been color correction before where it's but it's never been down to this detail.
And that's what he
never,
brought
ever.
up. He said they never took enough time on it. He goes, and that's why this one took 4 years to make.
Not even that, but the sound is phenomenal in this. The voice acting and everything, and the sound of the gunfire, and it makes the movie. It is unbelievable how everything well comes together.
Right, and they hired professional lip readers to understand what what they were saying in the video, because obviously it's silent. You couldn't hear them.
And that's another thing. Hearing these people talk, that's
humanized them so much more.
I mean, it's from the silent film era. So none of these videos. So to hear these talk is something you can't fathom.
No,
you can't put it together.
You can't.
But and then to hear them talk and hear them sound just like regular people, like you pulled them out of yesterday. Like they're just this group of big dorky guys that are all trying to out-manly each other and everything, but they're guys that are all kind of not knowing what they're getting into. Mm-hmm. Peter Jackson talks about it, but a big thing is they're so unused to seeing a camera in real life. Is every time it's so funny. Every time a camera shows, they're all staring at it like they don't know.
Well, because film had only been maybe 10 years to where these guys were even able to go see film. So they had always saw footage, but they never knew what a camera looked like. So they were just blown away when they did finally see the mechanics of a camera, and they look at that, and that's why you see a lot of the footage where they don't know what to do, because the way photos were taken back then is you had to stand in place for a long time in order for the photo to be taken, and like that's why sometimes you'll see the photos, old school photos, where if they moved a little bit, you'd see that kind of that phantom effect in a photo. So people had to stand still for a long time. And so these guys, these soldiers, they didn't really know what to do when they saw this camera. Do we stand still? Can we move? Can we smile? Like you see a lot of awkward moving.
Yeah.
And
they always go, we're on the pictures.
We're on the picture. Yeah.
But it also gives this great, amazing element where you'll get these soldiers staring at the cameras at like the most like opportune time, like when they're really scared or something. So you always see what emotion is going on.
Yeah.
So you'll see when they're happy or whatever, because they're almost always staring at the camera because they're so unused to it.
Yeah.
So that emotion really resonates with you.
And there was that one I don't want to call it a scene, but the one shot that they had where they're on the grassy knolls in that ditch, And Peter Jackson said this footage, majority of these men, if not all of them, died 30 minutes after this video. And you can see the fear on that one kid's face when he looks right into the camera.
Majority of the people and the soldiers died. I mean, in the war, there wasn't a lot of them that made it out.
And, I've been waiting to talk about this, so I'm just going to bring it up. And sorry if it's in your notes, but one of the most impactful moments in this entire documentary for me that really, really really showed me the horrific side of war was it would go from a soldier smiling and it'd show that same soldier dead. Smiling, dead.
We can talk about. We can just bounce around and do.
Yeah,
but
so I know we gotta.
We just talk about it. It does and he talks about it again where obviously the people recording all the footage, they weren't going to go run up and record all of it because they would have been mowed down immediately. Yeah. So they couldn't get footage of them actually in the battle or whatnot, or them dying. So, but to make it as powerful as possible, Peter Jackson did a great thing where, because they're all talking about the war, because it's obviously all survivors that are narrating it. Right. I mean, it's no people that died or whatever. So you're all getting their aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about how they had to go over the Somme or whatever, and but it was so they make it so where you'll get an interview and it will flash back to where it showed them all happy or whatever, and then you'll get a hard cut of a gruesome colored body that no one's ever seen before.
Body.
But it's of black and white, and every time it's very powerful. It gets the message through to where it does a good enough job to where you don't need to see the war, where I could see some people go into this movie thinking they're going to see footage of war, but it's just as powerful with just them talking about it, because you can 100% hear the horror in their voices when they're talking about it.
And Peter Jackson did a great job too, because you went back and you're talking about how we saw the soldiers, but we didn't get actual footage of the war because it was too dangerous. But what he did a fantastic job of is he used illustrations from that weekly I can't remember what it was, but the weekly news,
it was
weekly magazine,
the Weekly War, or whatever, a war that was a propaganda man.
But what he did so well is he never used any propaganda to illustrate the points of the soldiers. He only pulled out the ones that showed,
And he talks about how he used that magazine to illustrate a lot of the battles, because that was. Those were people they paid to go sketch first-person scenes of the battle and whatnot. So it was the most, and he ended up having every issue ever made, 800 episodes. Yeah. So he
had so many of them.
So in between the hard cuts of the narration and showing the dead bodies, he would also show illustrations, and
from the time.
And the illustrations are great too.
They're
very brutal,
very talented.
But again,
artists.
he said that of course everything that came out at that time was propaganda.
Right.
I mean, everything was to support the troops and everything.
Even as it is today,
Yeah, so he says that it showed a lot the Germans in a bad light, which of course there was a ton of. I mean, everything that came out showed Germans in a bad light. Right. So he took those images out and whatever, and just kept the ones where it showed them fighting. But even those illustrations line up to what a lot of the guys are talking about.
Yeah, almost word for word, and that's what they did so well, is they looked through all of those to line up what they were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the narration of the soldiers.
That was crazy.
Really blown away.
But I like the story of them getting, because they go to France, which it doesn't even say that. It doesn't even give you that information.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. No.
But that's where they're going. That's where, because it's all on the Western Front. They never say it, but it's Battle of the Somme, which is the biggest battle of the Western Front. It was 1916, towards kind of the end of the war. But it was a big, big battle, but they never mentioned that or any. But a story that I liked that I wanted to bring up was how they're saying how they all got promoted right before they went overseas or whatever, because a lot of them knew they were going to die. And they talk about that. Yeah. They make that very clear that the majority of them had no intention that they thought they were coming back.
No.
So even though they didn't know how grisly this war was going to be, they did know that it was a huge, huge war and that everyone was becoming involved. And a lot of them, it's crazy, just had no problem with going to die. But he talks about how one soldier says that NCOs didn't last the least amount.
Right, so there was no leadership on the battlefield.
Yes.
And that's what they talked about.
But he said NCOs lasted. So on the ship to France or whatever from England, he said he went in and tore off his his badge that showed that he was higher up.
Yeah.
So he said he went in the bathroom. What was not a captain or something, but it was some kind of something higher than
sergeant.
private.
Yeah.
But he came out of private. So
Yeah.
just because on average they died less than NCOs did. Obviously, it worked for that guy.
I must have, yeah. It did.
He's around
still
the
alive,
territory,
or he
yeah.
was, yeah.
But that's crazy. You know, you would never do that in the military. You would never.
No.
Your rank is everything.
Exactly.
But it's smart. When you know you're only going to be in most likely one battle or one war, I mean, rank really doesn't matter. A lot of those guys, I would say 98% of the guys that lived didn't stay in the military or anything after war.
No,
the war,
majority of them
like
got
a lot
out.
of people do now. Yeah, majority of them. Of course, after that war, a lot of them were probably done with war.
Oh, of course. And yeah, we'll talk about that too, as when they came back home.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. That was something that was crazy. But yeah, well, we should just talk about the trenches.
Oh my God, yeah. Let's talk about the trenches and the living conditions.
Trench
and what
warfare
they had to eat.
is by far the worst kind of warfare.
Awful.
It's fucking, you're living in your own shit. You're literally living in your own shit.
Your own shit, piss,
You're covered
vomit,
in
blood.
You're covered in lice. You're
Rats are
infested.
everywhere. They're
yeah.
feeding off dead bodies.
Oh yeah, you're constantly you're constantly smelling dead bodies.
Yes.
Where they talk about it.
Constant
they said
decay
it was
everywhere.
they said crazy. They say they tasted it and everything, the dead bodies.
They couldn't even get the bodies out in time.
Oh no.
They were
yeah.
decaying. A lot of those soldiers who died there were ended up, I mean, in a sense, buried there because they couldn't even get the bodies out.
But there's great imagery of them coming to the trenches for the first time, and then they're relieving the soldiers that have been there.
Yeah.
And the soldiers that are leaving are just shells of people.
They are.
You know, and then these
And
fresh.
you see them severely shaking. They can't even, because they're so shell shocked.
And then these fresh-faced guys are all smiling, and it's very, very scary imagery.
is.
And immediately, and we even see in the footage, because the footage is so good, that their demeanor kind of changes as they know that they're going to be in the shit.
Yep.
But so they get to the trenches, right? And they don't like it.
No.
They end up
No,
figuring
not at
out
all.
it's a lot worse than they got to shit on, like, they don't have bathrooms. There's no bathrooms.
No, there's
at
no
all.
bathrooms out there.
How you shit is there's a pole.
You sit on
You
it.
sit on it on the pole, I guess, with your butt kind of hanging off the other side.
Yep.
And then to wipe, you just wiped with your hand.
That's what they said.
It was so horrible. Yeah, it was.
And they had, their food was terrible.
Oh yeah.
They'd get like a can of, what was that?
it was-
like a can of mush, essentially.
Yeah, it was so funny because, again, this is the humanistic aspect that you never get, but they all complained about the jam, about how it was plum and apple. That was
Yeah,
the only,
yep.
and the guy was like, if you ever got anything plum and apple, it was a reason to celebrate. Yeah. But it was so funny because there was one guy that I kept hearing that, it was one guy that was like totally fine with everything. He's like, everyone else complained, but I was okay with
alright
it.
with it, yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
guy?
yeah,
It was
yeah.
so, even like during like the boot camp and everything, he's like, everyone else complained, but I was all right with it.
Even the sleeping conditions, because you had to sleep in mud.
It was the same
know?
voice. I want to know who that guy was because he was so funny.
He's
'cause
just the
he
biggest
kept
gangster. He's just
bringing
like,
up-
whatever. Yeah.
I
Just so content with everything.
Oh
and
yeah, he was so,
anything.
I'm pretty sure he was a guy that was like in the Boy Scouts or whatever. And he talked about how marching was no big deal, but it was so funny because you'd get horrible remarks, and then that guy would come in and he was like, "Yeah, it wasn't that big."
Yeah, you know, it could have been worse. It's like, I don't know.
I'm getting
And we got to talk about the gangrene these people got and the
Oh, yeah.
nasty photos they had of their feet.
trench foot
or
and-
trench foot, yeah. Isn't that gangrene, or am I wrong?
Well, trench foot is something you get in the trenches, and then gangrene sets in.
Yeah,
Gangrene
sets
is
in.
an
Yeah,
infection.
okay.
Yeah,
Right, which is what eats away at the flesh.
Yeah, trench foot is it's when your feet are constantly in moisture, so they never dry or anything, so the
Right.
skin just kind of starts deteriorating, and it makes it really bad for infection.
In the photos
Then
they had of
green-
those soldiers,
yeah, then
like that
green
one
gang
guy's
sets
foot was
in.
almost gone.
Oh, well, I guarantee for those pictures that they showed, they just had to cut those limbs off.
Oh,
'Cause
absolutely. Yeah, totally. They were purple.
They were black, and they
Yeah.
were just dead. They were
Yeah.
nothing, yeah. Oh, yeah, horrible. When you weren't even fighting, you had to worry about everything else killing you also. You know, not even to bring up the aspect that if you peeked your head out, if you stood up, there's a constant line of German snipers.
Snipers, and they were good
waiting-
shots too. according to the
Well,
England.
back then it was
Or to the English.
if you were good at shooting, you became a sniper. Now, you could train, anyone can train to be a sniper.
Right.
But back then, if you were a really good shot, you just became a sniper. And that's how it was with the English. Even during the boot camp, one guy was talking. He's like, I hit every shot. He's like, they made me a sniper.
Hey.
And, but yeah, so they were literally talking about how for years they couldn't stand straight up at all. And even at the end of the war, they're like, it was such a strange feeling to stand straight up.
Yeah,
and
from
not
the day
be
that peace.
shot
Yeah,
at.
they said it was just so eerie for them.
Yeah.
They didn't even want to stand up straight.
And people were constantly getting shot for just standing up.
Well, yet the one guy who was telling the story about it, he was talking to the guy, and suddenly he stands, or his head was just right over the trenches.
And to put into perspective, these trenches, they're not far apart, separated.
No.
They're a few hundred yards. And they even talk about how they can hear the Germans talking, and they could hear them singing and they're complaining and everything. Because towards the end of the war, they were saying how they could hear all the Germans had a bad mood because they knew they were losing the war and everything, and they knew it was close. So that's how close it was. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is.
Crazy.
It
Horrible,
is.
horrible living conditions. But again, they did not complain a lot. Very
I
little,
would've
if
been,
anything.
let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I'd be complaining every second.
I'm complaining when I don't have a pillow top on my mattress.
That's very true,
I
yes.
need that lumbar support. But yeah, and it shows all this to great detail where they're digging in, and at some point it rains, and they're just sitting in waist deep.
Waist deep water
And the
mud.
mud is so dangerous, like quicksand, that
Mm-hmm.
there's one very story that just struck me about the kid in the mud that they couldn't do anything about, and he just sunk in there and just drowned to death.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and they just said they knew.
Could
they
you
could.
imagine?
Because as soon as you step in that mud, you just start.
You're done. Yeah,
So they
you're
said they all
going
had
too.
to
It's
sit around
quicksand.
and watch this kid scream as he sunk down into the mud, which is probably the worst death
worst
of all
death
time.
ever.
Being just choked to death on mud. But yeah, it was so, and the barbed wire was so, there was so much barbed wire and everything.
There were dead bodies for weeks in those
and they
wires
said
decaying.
nothing could get through them. And that one picture they showed of the barbed wire, where it's just a field of barbed wire. Like,
I know. I was like, how did you even get that much out there? That's the same thing I was thinking. I'm like, how did you even put that much barbed wire out?
He said
there?
a rabbit couldn't get through, and I believe him. I believe him.
Yeah, 100%.
A fucking fly. It was such thick barbed wire that they were making sure no one was running through that.
Exactly.
And that is what they had to get to when they were running, when they were bayoneting. They had to go through that. You didn't want to be the first guy at the charge. You wanted to be close to the end. Where
if you were the first guy, you knew this is your final destination right here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So and that's all before fighting happens. But there was another really cool story about them doing the raid on the Germans. Do you remember that? How fucking crazy are these guys? Where at night they would just go raid German trenches like it was a fucking panty raid, like they were in college or some shit. Even talking about it, the guy was like, yeah, we'd go over there, we'd knock some Germans on the head, we'd steal their stuff, and we'd get out of it. Crazy. But I guess they just got so used to war and everything that it was
and that's what
normal
they
to
talked
them.
about.
Yeah.
They literally said it was just a job.
And that
It
is
was a job to them.
That is something you get by hearing them talk about it. Is they're just they're just so used to being around death that it's not a big deal to them at all. They talk about it how it's an everyday occurrence.
And to go back to the rats, they used to just casually talk about the rats. They go, yeah, the rats were so fat because they'd eat off the flesh of so many dead bodies. And they're talking about that, but the way they're talking about it is if they're talking about them just, oh yeah, I went down and walked
Talking
and
about
saw a
their
cute
taxes
dog
or
down the
something.
road.
It's
and
absolutely crazy. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah,
but it's just a job, to them after a while.
Just being surrounded by death, you have to get used to it, or you go insane, like they said.
Yeah.
And the constant bombardment of artillery. World War I was heavily artillerized for the first time ever.
That's where the term shell shocked really came into play.
Yeah, and it's just for years them sitting, and every time they hear a bomb, just hoping it's not going to land, just randomly. I mean,
it's all random.
How could you get a night of sleep? How could you possibly not go insane just thinking constantly that you're going to die? Eventually,
you have to make peace. Like if
you have to
make peace. That's it.
But
otherwise you go crazy.
It seems like they just all went right into it. Yeah, they just took it how it was.
Yeah,
tough bastards.
Yeah, no shit.
But yeah, it was hard living.
Very hard living,
to say the least. So it shows all that, and now they're getting prepped for the big battle, right? Did anything else happen in between that and the war? They're all it shows them getting prepped, and it's really cool that when it shows them all getting prepped, and it shows the guy like reading the paper of the speech to his soldiers. That is such an awesome scene.
That was really cool, and the way that they found that too was awesome.
Yeah,
because he found the
letter.
The original letter that he read to the soldiers, and that's how they were able to transcribe it to.
And he said it was the first time ever. He said that was actual footage that was seen
famous
before.
Footage of World War I.
But it's never been. And it was so cool. And the speech was awesome. It was just like a fucking movie.
Yep.
It was so badass. And the guy giving it was badass. It was just, but it was right before it had that intensity that it was, everyone kind of knew they were walking the plank.
Yeah.
Or everyone knew they were kind of, and everyone just accepted it. And they kind of got on with their business. But something we didn't touch on was when they got there and they talked about how it was just a desolate wasteland. How there was like once a city, and how they even kept the street signs up and everything. But there's so much bombs being dropped that there's nothing. The ground was just turned
flat
up.
Lands,
No buildings, no nothing. Absolutely pummeled to dust. Nothing left. And they talked about how they even shot artillery all the time just to clear barbed wire and stuff. And how this is true. This is a big deal. How Germans like to mine. How they like to blow up big giant craters, and that was kind of their thing because they could get really, really deep trenches and everything. So they constantly liked blowing up things under their feet and everything. So they were all constantly mining, and that ends up fucking up the British before the battle because remember they blow up that bomb right in the middle of no man's land between the trenches, and the Germans occupy it. They go and they fill it up. Because remember the bomb was supposed to be up towards the line. It was supposed to be under the British's trenches or whatever. But they blow it up like 500 feet in front of the trenches, so the Germans just go closer to them, and it fucks them over big time. But so they're getting prepped for that, and we see the camera footage of all the. It's like 4 hours before their bayonets, and they get the message that they're gonna fix bayonets and they're gonna run up on the Germans, which is pretty much. Just a death wish.
It is.
Because they know that they have machine guns, and they know that they're going to just fucking mow them down. Yep. But it's a numbers game.
It is.
You gotta just
and that's how it was back then. It was a numbers game. You're right.
You had to pound it. Yeah, because it was a game of inches. If you gained a trench, because that was
huge momentum back then.
That was big. That's why the Somme was such a big deal. They gained 6 kilometers, which is not a lot.
Nothing.
But it was ground. To gain that much ground was huge. Because literally that's all it was. It was just moving back and forth, this game.
Mm-hmm. So trench warfare is a brutal. Nasty business.
Yeah. But, so they tell them they're all going to, and then the hardest thing is they're telling them they're all going to go, but they make them wait this long 4 hours, and it's just brutal.
It would be excruciating.
Yeah,
just knowing that in those
torture.
Few hours you're more than likely going to die.
But I had the exact same mindset where it's like, I would want to go now. If you're going to tell me I'm going to go, I don't want to sit around.
Right. I don't want to dwell on the fact that I know I'm going. If I'm going, let me just go.
Yeah, and one guy talks about it. He's like, it was the longest and the shortest 4 hours of my life. Mm-hmm. He's like, they were all just there thinking about it. It's torture, absolute torture. But they all had to wait to get the call because 4 hours before they started the bombardment. So it was just the most warfare going back and forth of artillery. Because they had to clear the barbed wire, right? Which they didn't do a very good job of. They didn't. And they're all and the CEOs are like passing around rum and shit, and there's no limit on how much you can drink now, which is a fucking bad sign.
Idea.
If they're telling you, hey, go take a nose swig,
you're gonna get
crazy with it. Yeah,
you might as well.
Especially in England, and even they talk about how precious beer was back then. How they rarely got it and everything. But they said the rum was going around before they had to, and they said anyone could drink. I'm sure. There wasn't a lot, though, that could get anything down. I'd be throwing up.
Same.
I would be sick.
Everything and anything.
And a very scary scene, they talk about how one guy or a couple guys out of the group finally crack and say, and then the CEOs say, shoot that guy.
Yeah, someone shoot him because he was making too much noise.
Because you can't have, if one cracks, then it's very possible that it's a landslide effect, and then you get everyone. And the guy told him to shoot him. You got to do it.
And that's what he did, too.
Yeah, you got to. I mean,
Just like that one guy shot his friend.
Yeah.
Who took and he said, I knew he wasn't going to live. He goes, I wasn't going to let him suffer. He was my friend. So I shot him.
We can talk about that part was just fucking gut-wrenching because you hear that guy break down at the very end.
Yeah, he does break down.
And he says, because he starts crying and he says, it was the hardest thing
I got to
I've
be
ever
honest,
did.
man. When I heard that, I
It
got
was tough,
emotional
yeah.
in the theater and like, I really did. Like I almost started crying. I was like, whew, God, because like that's got to be one of the worst things to ever do. Ever.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Just shoot your friend.
And he went into such detail where he's like, it was because the guy was torn apart from artillery strike or something. He was just.
He said his left arm was severely damaged and his left leg.
Yeah, and his
like,
left leg they were both gone. Yeah, they were both gone. And he said I think he says his intestines might have been hanging out, but he said he had to shoot him, take the misery out. Crazy, and you could hear.
Yeah, you could hear the sorrow and pain in his voice.
Out of the toughness of all the shit they went through, that must have been the hardest fucking thing to do.
I could imagine.
To shoot the guy you've been living in a trench with for the last 4 years. Because they even talk about how it was hard for them to kill some Germans that were suffering and how they didn't want to.
I wanted to talk about that too because what this documentary does so well is it shows the human element, and they were talking about even with the Germans how they didn't hate the Germans. A lot of the times, like even after when they captured them, they were talking about them, joking around with them.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
The Germans
yeah.
helped them carry their wounded. These were just. Both sides were just young men who were just fighting for their country because they were
just
told
thrown
to do
into
that.
an extreme situation, and they just did what they're told. Yeah, they fought for their country. Yeah, even before they rush them with their bayonets, they do capture some Germans or whatever, and they said that they were just.
Some of them just wanted to surrender. They were glad to be out.
He said they were like Englishmen. He said they were very polite. He said they were very nice. They were messing around with them. They even talk about how the Germans, when they got captured, they were telling some of the English to give the Prussians hell because they hated the Prussians.
Yeah, they hated the Prussians.
Because the Prussians were brutal. They were animals, kind of.
And they spoke English, too. A lot of these Germans that ended up getting captured spoke English.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's really... Even in World War II, that's something that's always interested me is... Because even in World War II, there was some American Germans living in America that went back to Germany.
Yeah.
Some of them, and it's... crazy. So they would be talking to these soldiers, and then they
what movie was it that did that so well?
Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
The
it was
HBO.
a guy from Oregon. He was from Salem.
He was from Salem.
Yeah.
That's right. Band of Brothers.
And they end up killing him right after that scene. They end up shooting all of them.
Yeah, the fucked up guy shoots them all. Yeah.
But again, it was just like that where the soldier in They Shall Not Grow Old, he's like, I was sitting next to the German guy, and he asked him a question, not expecting him to talk back or whatever. And he speaks perfect English. And he's like, yeah, I used to bartend at this restaurant or whatever. I
know.
And the guy knew the restaurant or whatever. It was crazy. But again, like you said, they were just normal guys. They weren't
just thrown into an
these
extreme
monsters
situation
or anything. Like they weren't painted as really. It was the Austrian-Hungary, and it was Germany got it bad. They were the blame for a lot of it, but they weren't like the Nazis where you can really paint a bad picture of the Nazis.
Understandable. Yeah, I would say so.
But with these Germans, they were just like they said, normal fucking looking guys. They're just regular Joes who had to kill each other for no reason, really. And I like at the end they were talking about. They're like, yeah, we talked about it. They're like, we couldn't really see a good reason for
both
the war.
Both sides, both sides after they got captured.
They're like, we didn't really understand, and a lot of them were like, outside of our company, we didn't know what was going on or understand why the war was happening.
When you got to think about communications, even back then too. I mean, so terrible.
Oh yeah.
From 1914 to 1918, the communication's awful.
Yeah.
Radios or whatever, it's no good. So
the whistle blows, they clear the trench, and they take the Germans, but it's a bloodbath. And it goes into great detail about them describing it and how most of them were immediately mowed down.
Yeah.
And how at the start they were all kind of running, and they were surprised that they weren't getting shot at or anything. But the Germans were just waiting for them to close in so they could get clear. And then the guy says one of the guys narrating says they opened up on him, and they said they just tore everyone apart.
Yeah. Well, they had machine guns.
Oh, yeah, they were just running into machine gun fire.
Yeah, and they said that a lot of those guys who were just normal soldiers surrendered fast, but it was the guys with the machine guns they made sure to kill because they were high ranking. They fought to the bitter end. And the guys who were on the machines.
Those were the guys, guns. Those are guys that, knew what they were doing as far as German, officers or whatever. Those were badass guys. And Germany had, again, it does not go into this detail in the movie, but Germany was very advanced when it came to warfare in World War One and everything. They talk about how they saw the flamethrower guy for the first time.
And they didn't know what it was at first. They were like, what was this?
They probably thought this guy was a fucking wizard or something. This guy's shooting flames. So
it would be pretty crazy to see if you never knew and then you see a flamethrower, you're like, whoa, this is
and the guy said he put one right in the guy's chest.
Yeah.
And he said he just walked it off. He said the guy probably had some kind of armor or anything, which Germans did. And of course, I'm guessing...
Well, especially those guys probably had armor too.
Flamethrower guys were probably of the badass group. The flamethrower is nothing you ever want to volunteer for.
Hell no.
In any war.
Someone shoots that tank right.
And
we saw that in the Wind Talkers, that Nicolas Cage film.
It's the worst job by far. You're carrying around a napalm bomb.
Yes, on your back.
And it's just a silly weapon in the first place. Just
trench warfare makes sense.
It does. It clears
it does
trenches
make sense,
quick.
Yeah.
It clears trenches.
Yeah, it gets... And that's what they were talking about, the burning alive and hearing. Yeah. And that's what the guy said, too. One of the English guys was that he would hear multiple people screaming at the same time when they were getting incinerated.
And he talks about, and that's such a cool scene when they're talking about, because it's like, it's a couple different guys talking about it, but you could see it's all the same. Because they're talking about how that flamethrower guy came out, and one guy shot him, and another guy saw and threw a grenade. Because remember, the guy that threw the grenade got shot in the arm.
In the arm, yeah.
And he was like, well, I could throw just as good with my left hand. And he said that he threw that, and that disoriented the flamethrower guy, and then someone else was able to kill him, finally. And we didn't even get into, but this was the first kind of battle ever fought with tanks.
Yes.
Yeah, which we did.
Right.
Horrible tanks.
And we got to talk about what they said about those tanks, because there were so many bodies on the battlefield that they were running over their own men, their own dead bodies.
Well, they were kind of talking about when they cleared the trenches
brutal.
and started running for the Germans, that there were so many bodies piling
that
up. They were all kind of trying to avoid stepping on them, but eventually the CEO just said, just step on them. Yeah. And eventually they start piling them up to make the wall. To make a wall.
Oh, gosh.
Because the start of that battle, it did not start out great. They fucked up the bomb and that gave the Germans 5 minutes to move up. And it looked bad because none of the barbed wire was cleared also. So they ran. Even people that got to the front lines couldn't get there. So they're just standing there waiting to get shot. So it didn't look good. But eventually they were all occupying like holes and shit and everything, and they all started opening up fire. And they said that the CEOs were telling them just to clear their barrels as fast as they can. Yeah. And just shooting. And they said that they're shooting so much that the ends of barrels started getting hot. They started getting long because the metal was stretching. Crazy. That whole part of the movie was crazy. And without showing a single actual death.
Yeah.
It's very tense and very, very kind of scary.
And it's crazy. Like with World War I, I feel, and I don't know if this is the right word, because I don't, but I feel like sometimes World War I kind of gets overlooked because of World War II.
Oh, it absolutely does.
And it was supposed
to be the war that ended all wars.
All the wars,
and then
exactly.
It ended up not. It ended up kind of being a place where it absolutely gets glazed over.
And that's what this documentary shows. Is it brings back, like, it makes you realize, wow, World War I was just as brutal, if not more brutal in certain situations than World War II.
We didn't even talk about the mustard gas. Mustard gas was so horrible. It is just the worst thing. And they say, and it's a very scary part of the movie when they're talking about how they'd be in the trenches and they'd see this giant yellow cloud
slowly coming on them.
And it was like this ticking bomb that they all had to come and get their stuff together. And a lot of them couldn't find
couldn't find their gear in time. And you'd watch your buddy die right beside you.
And again, I swear it was the same guy who was like, because they say if you couldn't find a gas mask, piss on a cloth and put it over your mouth, which I'm sure doesn't do anything.
No.
But one guy was like, I didn't like that idea very much, so I just stuck my head in a bucket. Remember that guy? Yeah. He's like, when I couldn't breathe, and he lived somehow. But mustard gas, which gas was not used in World War II, but mustard gas was horrible. It blinded you.
It did.
It pretty much melted your insides. And it shows a lot of them, and they were talking about how they're being blinded and how there were thoughts going through their head of what life was going to be like without being able to see. And
they
stuff.
even showed the footage of all those blind guys coming out of the trenches with bandages over their eyes because majority of them were blind coming out. The ones that couldn't find their masks or their equipment.
Oh yeah, that's what it did. It blinded. Mustard gas.
For the ones who were lucky to live, anyway. Yeah.
Mustard gas was bad for a lot of people. It's bad for Germans too because gas is hard to control. Because of strong wind. Because
can change,
Hitler,
change the tides.
Hitler, who fought in World War One, was poisoned by mustard gas and had to go to the hospital. So that was one reason that it wasn't used in World War II a lot because it's dangerous for both sides.
Yeah.
But again, that's how desperate that war was. And we even saw from Wonder Woman.
Yes, we did.
How important gas was in World War
What
I.
a historically accurate
From the documentary Wonder Woman. Yeah, but mustard gas was horrible.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother, and that was a huge aspect of the war was mustard gas. But the tanks could only go 4 miles an hour.
Right, not the
and
fastest
when they went
things.
over 4 miles an hour, they broke down.
They did.
And they said that because this was the first time, so tanks weren't really tested.
No.
Right, and they said
They tested them on the battlefields essentially.
Yes, exactly. And they said even when bullets were shot at the tanks, shrapnel would be flying around
in the
so
tanks.
you'd be shredded and just cut up.
They didn't even make bulletproof tanks.
The tanks weren't. Yeah,
no, they weren't good.
No, they weren't good, and they went over first, and I don't think they had a huge impact on the war. Although and those tanks though were man. I like even when the guy was talking about.
Imagine manning that thing and having all that shrapnel metal flying everywhere inside your skin and oh god.
And even a really, I don't want to say cool, but action movie-esque, where the guy was talking about how an artillery hit a tank dead on right next to him, and said it was a huge fucking ball of flame and shot up. Yeah, you didn't want to be, because I'm sure a lot of people volunteered for the tank job.
Oh, of course. You think that's a good idea.
It.
You're like, oh yeah, this looks good.
But it broke down right in the middle of the battlefield most of the time. And most of the time you're just a sitting target and just waiting.
Hours upon hours, if not days, and by then you're dead.
Yeah, and you're getting shredded, literally shredded to death by shrapnel that's being shot through the tank. It was a scary time.
Yeah. Yeah, the different breed of humans, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, but eventually they make ground on the Germans.
They do.
They pop them. They start shooting them. And one guy's quoted he said remember he's talking about how the young guys. He said it got a little savage at one point, where he said all the young British guys were shooting defenseless Germans and whatnot just because they were so pent up and everything. And he talks about how it got animalistic at one point, but. I mean, it's not surprising.
It's not. Not given the conditions and warfare.
And it's people fighting for their lives. It's gonna be the most animalistic. Yep. That's the most animalistic. You're gonna see human beings.
And you're seeing people kill each other, killing your friends, the guy that you served next to for 2-3 years,
and being caught up in this and living in that trench. And it's all this amounting energy, bad energy, and everything. It's coming to a point.
Yeah.
And they said that it did get savage at points, especially with the young guys. But that's young guys. They're gonna have a lot of animosity and everything
towards the people who killed their friends. Yeah.
But yeah, they took it and they took a lot of the Germans prisoner. And again, the Germans, they fucking loved them. The Germans even helped a lot of them.
They did. They helped a lot of the wounded, carry the wounded up and down.
And that was in 1916, so I was 2 years before the war. But and then it kind of fast forwards and it says that not long after that, it was very obvious that the Germans weren't going to win, and they said morale, and again they said that the Germans were happy to be captured.
Yes, they were.
They were just happy. To not be in the war, and Germany was fighting fucking
everyone
forefront war. Yeah. So just imagine. I mean. I would like to see a They Shall Not Grow Old-esque German side film, which would be very interesting to see because, I mean...
I wonder if they had substantial battlefield film.
Yeah,
footage, I don't
know.
think so. I don't think the Germans did.
No, I mean... 100 hours of footage. I'm surprised the fucking English had. And
I know 100 hours.
It was actually kind of surprised because they said it was sitting in the New Zealand library or whatever, and no one really even knew about all this footage that they had. But yeah, 100 hours. I'm sure there's some, but footage like this, you think it's pretty fucking rare.
Yeah, you would assume.
Because even the footage they show at the end of what the original footage looked like, it was a mess. The warped footage and everything.
It was awful. It was blotchy, shaky.
Yeah.
10 frames a second. Not good footage.
No, it was horrible.
No.
So they take the Germans, and the war kind of peters out at the end. That's how it ends. That's how this war, or the movie action part movie ends. It doesn't get into the 2 years after, and then it transitions back from color. Because the only times it's color is when they're actually on the front, the Western Front. Mm-hmm. So once they start getting back into civilian life, it goes back into
black and white. Yeah.
And they talk about it's so odd to think about, but they talk about when the war was announced that it was over. They said there was no cheering or anything.
Nothing.
It was kind of just this blank feeling that they were kind of fired from a job.
And they were fired too, essentially, because when they went back home, they weren't treated right.
No, they were
treated horribly. A lot of people were like, "Oh, you fought in the war." Some of them didn't even want them.
Well, that was a big part of it. They talk about how no one could understand what they were going through or anything. No one could fathom because no one's ever seen a war like that or anything. And they talk about how it's sad. One guy even talks about how his parents didn't want anything to do with it, talking about it or anything.
They had no one to talk to. And imagine the shell shock. Imagine the violence they've seen. Not being able to talk.
Couldn't get jobs. Couldn't get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are some incredible These are some incredible human beings.
Oh yeah.
Really incredible human beings that. We go through 1/1000th of what they do. Yeah. And we all break down.
Oh, absolutely.
But these guys had no choice. They had to do this,
but they took it, and they took it exactly like it was just another job, just doing what they had to do. But yeah, they talk about how they got in, the war was ending, and they were all just no cheering or anything. Because they didn't really know. They literally gave their life to this. A lot of them didn't expect it to make it out.
No.
So they were just kind of stunned, but they didn't know what to do next.
They didn't know what to do after the war either.
Yeah. Yeah. And they weren't, it's weird. They weren't super happy the war was over because that was kind of the only thing they knew now. And it was their job. But again, a guy says, there was a job, they went in, they did it, and they said there was a huge accomplishment feeling that what they did was done. Yeah. It was crazy though. It was a crazy. For 1 hour, I could say I almost felt like I was in war, almost.
Yeah.
But not. I mean, not
out
of the comfort of my own movie theater.
Out of the theater, yeah, of course.
There was. Yeah, so final thoughts on it. Was there any other scenes you wanted to talk about or anything?
Not that I can think of. I think we covered a lot well too. I was so blown away, and this I will go see again. If this is in theaters again next weekend, I'm gonna go watch it again.
Oh yeah, this is something I definitely want to like.
And this is one that
take anyone I can find to.
Yeah, and this is one that's completely worth buying when it comes out.
Oh,
I don't own copies of anything, but I will own a copy of this because this is as far as World War I footage. This is truly groundbreaking work. Peter Jackson and his team was able to do with this footage.
It's nothing short of amazing. I mean, we talk about it, but this is the movie event of the year. If Avatar was the movie event of whenever the fuck it came
2009.
out. Yeah, or fucking Mad Max was it. This is the if you're going to see one movie this year, Star Wars or anything, go see this movie. If you're going to see one movie,
I totally agree.
It's such an important film. And even with the title, They Should Not Grow Old. With this movie, these guys won't ever be forgotten.
Never.
It will live on forever. And now, for the first time, we have this human aspect of it. And their first-hand take of what it was like and everything, where they're not just numbers and everything. But yeah, it's
and that's
the movie
unfortunately
event.
Because our brains can't comprehend it. That's a lot of the times what we do is we put statistics and we go, oh well, 4 million people died.
Oh yeah,
during this.
It's a lot easier to comprehend and take in when we don't have to put
a face to
the numbers. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is not. It's not a good thing that we do that.
No, it's not.
We should know the people that But that was the clear message of the movie, is that we should go out and seek this information and get people before they're gone. Especially, there's not a lot of World War I veterans left.
No, there's none. No,
Yeah,
there's none. Yeah, no, there's none.
Yeah, no, not.
Because they would be 120 now. They're all dead and gone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, well, you could be. No, I guess if you went.
If you went to war,
you could be 115. If you went to.
Come on.
If
you was 115.
Yeah, if you went to. But you could go ask your grandparents or whatever.
Right.
And they would have first accounts because that would be their grandparents.
And that's what Peter Jackson said, too, how important that is to talk to your family now and see who of your family could have fought in World War I. It's very possible because it was a very big war.
Yeah.
That some of your family could have fought, if not died, in World War I.
It was a war that really touched everyone. No one was untouched by World War I. I mean, everyone felt the effects of it.
Right.
All right. Should we give our review on it?
Sure.
I got a feeling.
And we're both the same here.
Yeah.
I'll go first because it'll be the same. An A+ for me. This is just, I can't say it enough. It's just absolutely incredible. Incredible. And that's it. Go see it, please. If you, again, as Cash said, if you see one thing this year, this is what you need to see. This is groundbreaking work. I'm just so incredibly impressed with Peter Jackson and his team being able to restore this footage, and we finally get to put a human face to this. And that's that.
It was, I'm right up there with you. If this is as close as movie perfection gets. Mm-hmm. But again, it just shows how strong a filmmaker Peter Jackson is. He's still one of the greats.
He is.
He still fucking has it for sure. But yeah, this movie is phenomenal. If there is 100% movie out there, this is it. This is the one. It's so powerful and it's so fucking moving. And you will never see World War I like you'll see this.
Yeah,
it's
never.
complete. They should show this in every school and everywhere because and it will get you interested too. It
does.
Yeah, a lot. Like you said, a lot of people are just glazed over World War I. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you remember being taught anything World War I in school? Even the American side.
I did an A push because Mrs. Condit's really good,
Yeah.
and she's like the best teacher ever. But other than that, like throughout my whole life, other than that, no, never.
No,
it was always glossed over to get to World War II.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know?
And that's a huge reason is people just look at World War I as building blocks of World War II. Because what happened in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles did lead up to World War II.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
100% led up.
Because it made the Germans very bitter and resentful.
Well,
yes.
Well, they were not left in a good place.
No, they were not.
Which, again, now that you see how human all these German soldiers were, it was very shitty that both sides went back and couldn't find jobs, but Germany went back and suffered 20 more years of fucking depression and the worst. Because the entire country made Germany pay for the World War. And that was a huge part of it, even though it was a lot of the Austrian-Hungarian, because Franz Ferdinand, he was Austrian. He wasn't even German. I mean, that was the big thing. But they made them pay for it.
Yeah.
And then they were pissed. And World War II happened.
Yep.
Then we made them pay for it again.
Yeah.
And now I don't think there'll be a German World War III.
No, I don't think there ever will be one.
Yeah. I think after 2 times, you got to learn your lesson.
Yeah.
But
I think so.
Never underestimate the Germans is one thing that you should learn from this.
Yeah.
Is they are very powerful for a pretty small country.
Very smart. Smart people, too. Very intelligent people.
War-oriented when it comes down to it, yeah. Well,
what's your? We didn't hear your.
A+.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay,
A+.
I figured it'd be the
100%.
Same.
Yeah.
And I'd like to bring this up, and I don't mean to end on a sour note, but Rotten Tomatoes has given this a 99% certified fresh, and I was so upset that it was 99. I had to find the one bastard who gave it. What is this called? A bad review, but
Yeah.
a rotten review. His name's Jonathan
But
Romney.
it's from Film Comment magazine. I've never.
Well, they're considered one of the critics to review this, but Jonathan Romney, go fuck yourself. You're an idiot. I don't understand how you don't appreciate this at all.
I saw another guy that said he didn't like it because he went in there looking for facts and numbers and thought it was going to be straight up historian. Yeah, like
Okay, but you can't go in there with a preconceived notion.
Yeah.
You have to look at it for what it was.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
I could not believe it. Some people just, I want to smack, and that's why the internet sucks. But it's also awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, great documentary. Please go and watch this.
See this
Go
film.
see it.
This is a film that barely even came to theaters. It wasn't.
I know, it
gonna
was a
have wide
Fathom
release.
event.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It wasn't going
And
to have
that's
a
like
release
limited
at all.
release.
Yeah. And then Paramount picked it up. But go see
Yeah,
this
go.
while you can, because you're going to miss out not seeing this in theaters.
Totally.
I saw it on the fucking big screen.
Nice.
Yeah, on the
Did
biggest
you?
one they have, and the sound was amazing. Yeah, it was like literally me and like one other old guy.
Yeah.
In the entire theater.
I went in the movie parlor, and I kind of appreciated the movie parlor because it's small. It kind of felt more.
Yeah.
I felt like more immersed in it, but yeah, it was all old people, and then one other young guy was next to me, and I was like, and he was really fascinated in it too. I was like, oh,
But
okay, we have
seeing it huge on that 4K screen. I mean, like,
Yeah.
like you said, you can't take it in. Again, I'm gonna have to go see it again.
Same.
Yeah, for sure.
We might have to go together, honestly. I think
Yeah,
it'd be fun
I
to go
think it would be
watch
fun
and
too.
commentate ourselves on it. So, alrighty, everyone. This is a very special episode. The first episode we did a documentary on, and damn, what a
It's gonna
one
be all
to do it
downhill
on.
from here.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get better.
I mean,
as far as
Yeah, and we can't. Where do we? The only thing we could go here is the Mr. Rogers documentary.
Right, of course.
That is actually what we need to go after
would have
seeing
to,
after
yeah.
sitting through some heavy shit.
We should watch
we
Mr.
need
Rogers.
to see Mr. Rogers. But I'm glad I was hesitant to pick this one because we've never done documentary before. But after seeing it, I knew I'm like, oh yeah,
and
we had to see this one.
and I really enjoyed talking about it too,
Yeah,
because
so
it
do
is
I.
important
Yeah.
to talk about.
And I tried not to get into it too much, but I love learning about history and shit
Same.
like that. But I try not to get into it because Peter Jackson didn't try not to
Right,
get into
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
it is harder to talk about World War I without talking about all the crazy shit that happened, because it was a crazy, crazy time, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
When everyone was picking sides.
Right.
Everyone was fighting each other, invading each other. Crazy.
Alrighty, everyone. This you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere where you can find a podcast. If you want to watch us on video, type in HYSI 117. This is episode 117. You can find us on Spotify, Apple. I already said all those. Type in Have You Seen It? On Twitter, Seen
Give
It
us
Podcast.
a review. We're on Facebook also.
Yeah, give us a review, guys.
Like
write
our
a review,
Facebook
like our
review-
Facebook
yeah.
page. Yeah, give us a 5-star review on Facebook. Cash is on Twitter. That's just Cash. Seen It Podcast for us on Twitter. And make sure to leave us a review on iTunes too, guys. That'd be awesome. We might even give you a shout out on the podcast. That's actually what we'll do. Leave us a review and we will shout you out.
Absolutely. Drop your Twitter handle on there.
Hey,
I'll
there you
fucking
go.
shout it
Yeah.
out. I don't care.
We'll give you a follow too. From the
yeah.
official Seen It Podcast.
That's pretty. It's a big
Pretty
deal.
prestigious.
That's a big deal.
It
Yeah,
is.
that's,
It is. It is.
That's a big deal. We don't follow everyone.
Yeah, so if you want to be one of the select few.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, this was fun, Gash. Until next
Absolutely.
time.
Adios.